risk of being a target. So unless you for sure know what the enemy composition will be doing, then you're going to need this talent. Without the added survivability this talent provides, you'll find it incredibly hard to live, no matter what composition you're playing. Kleptomania is another very good talent pick that you'll want to have most of the time.
Did we lose this game? I didn't sign off on this. I didn't sign off on any of this. How dare they use my likeness? This is an act of war. Skillcapped has seen my video and they are threatened by me. They're trying to tear my reputation. But worry not, friends, for I will take my royalties in vengeance. I'm going to make the video that Skillcapped doesn't want you to see. I'm going to teach you how to play a tank in Arena. There's a real stigma against tanks in Arena, but don't let that deter you. Revel in that toxicity. Take pleasure in ruining the game for others. You aren't just defeating them in Arena, you're defeating them in real life too. But to beat up gamers through the internet, you can't just pick any tank, you need to pick the right tank. And since tanks will be good in Arena forever, you need to know what tank to pick whenever you're watching this video. And to explain tanks properly, we need to go all the way back to the very first recognisable RPG tank, from the 1990 Finnish MMO Batmud, which would take way too long, so we're starting with the redesign of tanks with the beginning of Legion. Jesus Christ. Okay, really quickly, tanks have never been overtly barred from Arena, but they very rarely worked. They dealt very low damage, were functionally unkillable, and were just an all-round frustration. If you ran into them, you ignored them. Tanks were built around this very video gaming concept of a threat table. They're designed to be attacked by idiot robots who have no choice but to hit them. This is the polar opposite of PvP, where sentient players generally pick the most vulnerable target. There have been examples of tanks in PvP, like Up Warriors in 3.3 or Gladiator Stance Warriors in 6.0, but they're the exception. In general, tanks are a square peg in a round hole. And if they were going to work in Legion, Blizzard would need to design a new role for them. A series of Legion Q&As are held. Then Assistant Game Director Ian Hazakosis hints at wanting to get tanks involved in PvP in a non-obnoxious way. No one knows what he means. A fortnight later, Ashran creator and all-round good sport Brian Halinka holds his own Q&A, specific to PvP. He would go on to outline the team's vision for tanks in Arena, as well as the mechanisms to accomplish it. They would need to resolve those existing problems we just covered, and craft an interesting new role, give casual players an avenue to PvP as their preferred spec, and offset the problems of the artifact weapons with its lengthy, specialization-specific progression system. Let's give the class team credit. This was a Sisyphean task that did not need to be done. They could have just said that the artifact weapons automatically filled in PvP, and saved themselves a ton of work. But they went for it. They challenged themselves to make something new. It certainly didn't hurt that they had the perfect tools for the job. Legion implemented a template approach to stats. Within instance PvP, your character's gear would be ignored and a pre-cut template of stats would replace them. Most successful esports do not have such extreme RPG elements gnawing at balance. Templates gave Blizzard complete control over the balance of classes. So, how do we prepare a non-obnoxious tank? Well, we start by reducing the tank's stamina level on their template, offsetting their traditional health increases. Then we give them a damage-oriented stat distribution, but that alone won't do it. We need to move on to hidden multipliers. We can just make tanks take more damage than other classes. We can also shift the damage values of spells. We don't want Avenger's Shield giving Paladins too much cleave, so we can bring that down, but maybe bump Judgment's damage. Next, we need to address that passive mitigation. Tanks need to bring tankiness to their team, but they'll just be ignored if they are the tankiness. That increased damage we mentioned, make it high enough that without active mitigation, most tanks are vulnerable. Let people kill them in a setup. But now they're just really weak. We need to bring back that defensive vibe, so we're going to find unique ways for tanks to share their healing and mitigation with their allies. Guardian Druids increase health and reduce damage taken by their allies. Terrific. Prot has the option to cast their shield wall on teammates. Awesome idea, reinforces the class fantasy, love it. Finally, we need to give them some offensive tools. Their damage can't be allowed to match a pure DPS, so we'll give them tools that enable their partner. This takes the form of potent crowd control and intimidation, a debuff that increases damage dealt to a single target. Now in RPGs they can serve as a target caller. And that's our new archetype, a fresh take on a classic, evocative of the original, but original. Kind of. Blizzard created a vector for tanks to enjoy some casual PvP and be more useful in RPGs. He had nothing to worry about.
What we want them is to be in a situation where, like, if you feel like you're a tank and you want to go do some arenas with your friends, you can be very good. And you can, especially if you're a very good tank, and you can go in there and have fun. I don't know if we want it to get to a point where at the high end, everybody's playing tanks in 3v3 arena.
Might not see a prop paladin at BlizzCon, but you can still see them on the ladder.
Right.
We do know they have a ton of comps available to them. And they are bringing in Officer Bean. They're going to go with Cdew on the Holy Paladin, Smexon on the Enhancement Shaman, and guys, Bean playing Protection Paladin.
Needs to kite, avoid some of this incoming damage, but Swifty once again getting smoked. Botar's going to go into the Blast. Could be scary. The odds going out on the Swifty down to 10%. He's going to go down.
Well, I mean, when Josh said might not see a Paladin at BlizzCon, he probably meant mightn't see a Paladin win BlizzCon, which, you know, they didn't. The Paladin team lost. And if anything, that's a testament to how well the class team did, right? Like, it's balanced. But if I'm honest, Blizzard hasn't really succeeded at keeping tanks out of high-end arena, which is good, great even, because that's why you're here. I get to show you. I'm going to show you what makes tanks so good in arena, so you can play one like me. For the first few seasons of Legion, Protection Paladin was the only tank we saw in the meta, which, let's be frank, was pretty boring for us tank mains. We wanted variety, and we'd get it, but Protection serves as a great roadmap for how all tanks succeed in arena. Once you understand why Protection Paladin works, we can shift the variables to paint a picture for, say, Guardian Druid. To start, as we've already discussed, Blizzard shifted the typical armory passive mitigation of tanks into healing. This caused tanks to become a form of off-healer, either through direct healing or redirecting damage to themselves. This grinds against one of the core axioms Linker talked about. The tanks do meaningful damage. They're now a hybrid DPS healer, and that's an extremely delicate balance to pull off. And luckily for us, that balance is off a lot. So some might say that for a hybrid DPS healer to be balanced, it should be doing like half the damage of a DPS and half the healing of a healer, something like that, never exceeding the power of a single player. Like Resto Druids, for instance, are so good in Mythic Keystones because they're a full-blown healer that can also contribute a ton of damage that a Holy Priest, let's say, couldn't. Even if the Druid and Priest do identical healing, the Druid is objectively more valuable because of that additional damage they bring. Tanks have the same dichotomy in Arena. What you're about to see is merely a visual aid and not firm mathematical evidence. The nature of PvP means these numbers can't be truly meaningful. I made a spreadsheet with every prop paladin game I could be bothered to find since the revamp. By comparing Protection Paladin's damage and healing output to those around them, we can make some anecdotal assessments about Prot's contribution to the game. Really quick, because the prop paladin's contributing healing to his own team, I feel like the enemy healer is a better benchmark for what a healer can do. We're sticking with paladin's own teammate for damage comparison. Based on this, we can see Prot's damage can vary from less than a third to over 2/3 of their teammate's damage. There are too many factors to account for here, but based on this, I for one would be happy to accept that prop paladins do around 50% of a DPS's damage in arena. Good balance. The numbers fall apart though when we consider the healing output. Protection Paladins can easily exceed half the enemy healer's contribution. When they don't, we can see their damage contribution exceeds that 50% mark. The Paladins in these games are doing huge amounts of healing, often exceeding that of the enemy healer. If we simply add these percentages together, with 100% as our goal to match a full player's contribution, we can see that Protection overwhelmingly exceeds this, sometimes by massive margins. Anything above this blue line can be considered for our purposes to be quite literally overpowered. Now, there is a huge amount of survivorship bias here, because when Protection Paladins aren't good, these people don't play it. When tanks don't win, they don't get uploaded to YouTube. So these figures are more helpful in allowing us to understand the conditions in which Protection thrives. Another flaw with the spreadsheet is actually a segue into our next point. Paladins use their extra CC to oppress the shit out of the enemy healer. Protection's Hammer of Justice cooldown is so short, it is common for it to be shorter than its own diminishing return. Add in Shield of Virtue and the CC brought by teammates, and the enemy healers are going to struggle to do their job. And as always, the Paladin brings a ton of utility from buffs, whose value can't really be measured. That wall, I noticed it.
Oh, that was so good.
I did it by accident. No! It's not fair. He doesn't deserve this. So Protection ends up with this vague identity. Are they a DPS, off-healer, buffer, or disruptor? Trick question. They're all four. And the net result is that Protection Paladin, when in the meta, is worth more than the sum of its parts. This affects the texture of arena games. They can often require entirely new strategies out of the opposition, generally involving more difficult cross-CC. While the enemy team is working hard, you're chilling. It's not interesting counterplay, it's just frustrating. You see a lot of suggestions that Taunt in PvP should be a forced target swap to make you notice the tanks. The irony here is that tanks already demand you notice them. No other single player influences an arena game as thoroughly as a meta tank does. You'll note that because the strength of protection is so diversified, it's possible to balance them a bunch of different ways. Here's every nerf to protection paladin in the last 4 years, and all of them have contributed to temporarily making me play red. But don't worry friends, this can't last. It never can. New expansions, new content patches, they bring changes to the meta that Blizzard can't fully control. Protection will always be a chance of surging back into competitive play. The toolkits exist, and under the right circumstances, they'll come for you. This is the limbo that all tanks exist in. They can't be controlled. We won't be controlled. Now that you understand how one tank works, we can blaze through the rest. Protection Warrior. Warrior has seen the most tank play in Arena after Paladin. They shift more into the disruptor role, as well as with defensive talents like Morale Killer, Bodyguard, and Mass Bow Reflect. As with Paladin, even though they look like a control dampening spec, they don't tend to succeed unless the damage is high. Their signature dish is a non-DRing 1-second root on a 4-second cooldown. Bellissimo. Guardian Druid. They saw some play in Legion, but had its real moment in Season 3 of BFA, which we'll discuss later. Guardian Druid is similar to Warrior, but with less disruption and more passive damage mitigation for the boys. Guardian can increase the health of allies as well as redirect the damage they take to the Druid. Guardian also has heavy cleave damage with Thrash, as well as, Blood. Okay, we're into the niche ones now, so we'll pick up the pace. I can't find any footage of this, but Blood's kit lends itself to being an enabler for other classes, particularly Wizards. They have all these tools that can group and oppress the entire team. That is where abilities like Death Chain and Necrotic Aura can come into play. Imagine a Destro Warlock just throwing an Infernal into all of that, and that is your Blood DK archetype. Brewmaster. They've never had a real phase of being in, but we know from Method Orange's bullshit antics in 2018 that they could be played as a burst setup class. With AoE CC and high AoE burst, Brewmaster could do a lot of damage within small stun windows. At one stage they could also cast Guard on teammates as a potential save. They also can redirect damage to themselves like Guardian Druids. Vengeance. Vengeance is self-healing oriented. They don't have any defensives to contribute to their team, but have absurd mobility. This makes them a staple of RBGs. I have a ton written about RBGs, but I should probably gauge interest in RBGs before let's just move on. Legion was an expansion with regular balance changes, so the developers were able to keep this PvP renaissance going with, very little consequence. Those original design goals were accomplished thanks to a committed design team given the tools they needed. Templates were the linchpin that made tanks work, and as long as they were around, we were all going to be okay. What?
And I don't think anybody really likes stat templates.
The problem that I have with PvP stat templates, however, is that there's not really any customizability.
Templates are stupid and shouldn't be in the game. It brings nothing to the game, only makes the game even more boring. No customization in an MMO is super dumb.
Look, everybody! My purse exploded!
Templates were so boring. Sure, they gave us some of the most accessible and balanced PvP we ever saw, but, this is Mamorbica, so trinkets, right? So in spite of the benefits of templates, there was a real negative vibe around them. So come BFA Beta, they just weren't there. And balanced PvP has been a shit show ever since. Some classes haven't really been viable in over a year. PvP trinkets haven't really changed in a decade, so PvE stuff is just running wild. And best of all, without templates, Blizzard lost their best mechanism for class balance. All that work done to sculpt the squishy tank and Legion, all gone. And best of all, they didn't even seem to notice at first. So the reduction in tank health is gone. Tanks can gear defensively, they can use defensive trinkets, they feel like tanks again. During the first portion of BFA Season 1, we didn't really see any tanks, because Blizzard just kind of got lucky. They changed the protection paladin to heal and it limited their off-healing capacity. But in 8.1, still technically Season 1, they reverted that change and the floodgates opened. Protection Paladin was more overpowered than it had ever been. To the untrained eye, it looked like the same thing, but Prod in 8.1 was a very different beast. because, well, it was an actual tank now. They kept the damage, the healing, the control, but got given back a bunch of their defensive mitigation. In Legion, they were often a viable kill target, but in BFA, they're a high health tanky target. You aren't going to kill that. With them off the table as a kill target, your options are limited, and teams are either left to dampen them out over lengthy games, or they need to pull off more extreme cross CC than is ever expected in standard play. Hell, Protection's healing is so high, why bring the healer? They can be the healer. And now you're playing triple DPS without the drawback. This madness goes on for almost 2 months before Blizzard drops a set of nerfs which were almost identical to a change they made in Legion. Because I guess when they changed the ability from Legion to BFA, the multipliers didn't carry over and no one caught it? Wait, if that's true, if Paladin was only good because of a small but impactful oversight, if it was human error, was I taking advantage of a flaw in the game for my own benefit? Was I not as good as I thought I was? Was I cheating? No, it can't be. It just can't.
Much. Hands off, please.
Oh, surely.
Such a finish.
Oh my god, 40% damn. Let's see what rating they are.
1667.
Okay, you guys.
Dude, look at our damage done.
Like, I'm not shit talking, but look at our fucking damage done. I mean, obviously.
Look at this prop Pelly's healing.
Obviously, there's a few mistakes made, but this is absolutely ridiculous.
So those nerfs work, and Protection is out of the meta for Season 2. And then the prop warriors turn up. Season 2 is the slowest meta I can recall. We're all stacking tank here, even the wizards. So games are going for a long time. Into this, prop warriors with their regular AoE burst windows could generate some serious pressure. This is the season where the frequent and sweeping hotfixes we had enjoyed since Legion stopped. We saw very few changes in the entirety of 8.1, and warriors wouldn't have this interaction nerfed until the launch of 8.2. I can't remember warriors being super good in Season 3, but I admit I'm a little... I get them mixed up a little bit. So us tank mains were out of luck for Season 3 then. Nope, Guardian Druids kept under the radar until this point before exploding in Season 3, being the most spread instance of tanks in Arena yet. I can't verify this claim, but word is that more Guardian Druids got Gladiator in Season 3 than Hunters did. Just all 3 specs. I guess there just aren't that many good Hunters around. It doesn't sound right. In either case, Guardian Druids got some nerfs at the beginning of Season 4, and they've not really been around since. It's fine. But worry not, fellow tank mains, there is reason to be hopeful. 8.3 brought the corruption system, and as far as I can tell, this can bring Protection Paladin back into the meta. Because corruption effects have fixed damage. They disproportionately benefit tanks more than DPS, right? Like a 40k infinite stars is like, 3% for an arms warrior, but 7% for protection. You know what I'm saying? So they have the means to creep up in terms of DPS, and those 8.1 nerfs, they're still in effect. Like, look at this spreadsheet, right? Some of these numbers almost look right. They're almost balanced. Combine this with their broken CC and immunities in a fast meta, and protection can be in the meta again. We can make it work. It has to work. I need to be taken seriously again. I was taken seriously, right? At time of writing, we've only just seen the Shadowlands alpha go up, and Blizzard apparently forgot to send me my invite. It's okay, I'm sure it'll arrive any day now. What we do know is that classes are being overhauled to accommodate the unpruning. Classes like Paladin are being upended and will look very different to how they look now. And Blizzard could put in the work to hold on to this great archetype they've made, because it can work. It can be balanced. They just need to change. What am I doing? I have been arenaing on and off since 2009. Did okay in 2s and Wrath, but my first real success was in Legion as Protection. And I've got mixed feelings about that, if I'm honest, because on the one hand it was a gateway into Arena, right? Like it was fun. On the other hand, there was a stigma around it. People mightn't have actually have unpacked why they felt the way they did, but people knew the texture of the games were off. And there was an element of shame around it, frankly, and it made Arena this incredibly hostile experience where, you were good at something, you felt good about yourself, and everyone you played against disagreed, and your teammates were oddly silent on the problem. So, I did what people do. I made excuses. I told myself that I'd found something new and this was my reward. You know, and that's something we see a lot of even today. People who play tanks, they're as defensive as the classes that they play. So for instance here, like this is Swifty's reaction to the 8.1 Paladin nerfs.
And a lot of people don't like it because it brings a new mechanic to the game and they don't know how to deal with it.
Again, these were the nerfs that were at a point where the class was the most broken it had ever been. But he chalks it up to people just refusing to make new strategies. Or this Reddit post where the OP calls himself an innovator for noticing the protection was pretty good in 2s. You know, like as if that wasn't a 2-year-old observation. It's now been 4. It's easy to call yourself an innovator when the deck is stacked in your favor. You aren't the Elon Musk of Warcraft for noticing that Prot and Unholy do a good job running at healers in 2s. This idea of tanks as these jack-of-all-trades, they're a little bit of healing, a little bit of disruption, a little bit of cooldown management. It's a very romantic image, but it's bullshit. Like, everyone is off-healing and cooldown managing and disrupting. That's what Warcraft Arena is. It's what you sign up for. You know, ultimately, protection brings most of the same tools that Ret does. It's just the same archetype on training wheels. And you know, those training wheels gave me the ability to beat BlizzCon competitors without knowing the fundamentals of the game. Like, I didn't cast because I knew I couldn't fake these people. So I just didn't press the buttons. You know, I knew I couldn't interrupt, so I was better off just sitting on my kick. A day after I shot this video, we ran into this Guardian comp. I want to take a moment to highlight this game, particularly how the Resto Druid plays. They dogpile into melee playing Guardian Infinity and just sit there, role-playing another Guardian Druid. The Resto Druid rarely needs to even leave bear form. This eliminates the idea of playing the blue bar, in spite of all this cleave damage we're doing. This madness goes on for 10 minutes before we run out of tools and die. This is not how Resto Druid is designed to survive. In a sense, the Resto Druid isn't even needing to perform the role that Blizzard crafted for them. They're playing the game in such a different way. This player likely relies on this playstyle to survive. We have some evidence of this because in the next game they played Cat Affinity and died at the 3-minute mark. This is the influence that tanks have on their own teammates, and ultimately it is a cul-de-sac. How much can this strategy be improved? How much can a player grow from 1,000 games of this? Improvement will occur, sure, but sooner or later you'll find yourself at the mercy of tuning. Either you can do this and win games, or you can't and you won't. Ultimately, I played Protection with the same vibe of a teenager aimbotting in Counter-Strike. I was cheating, and deep down I knew it. And you know, yet I demanded to be taken seriously. Like, how fucking wild's that? Blizzard could make tanks work in Shadowlands. My question is, should they? All this work, all this frustration, and what has it gotten us? Where's the fun? I guess if Shadowlands is the expansion where gear is gear, there'd never be a better time for Blizzard to just quietly exclude tanks from Arena. You know, after all, they're not asking tanks to invest, you know, heavily into some spec-based progression system this time. It's just, you gotta get the right weapon. I'm sorry guys, I know I promised you a PvP tank guide, and I wanted to, I can't support it anymore. I don't know why tanks should be here. I don't know why I should be here.
Yes, I'm pushing out. I silenced him. Let's go. I can silence him. Please, come on. Kill him! Come on, kill him!
Oh my god, he just did like 140% of the other guy's damage. That's insane.
I just wasn't sure if I should save my.
I kicked him too.
Stun me?
I'm not saying Bonnie. I'm off healing.
Blessing of Sanctuary? That's way better than the Protection Blessing of Sacrifice. And the Hammer of Justice cooldown's only slightly shorter. Wait a minute. If I were a Death Knight, why would I play Blood and do one gimmicky setup every 3 minutes, when I could play Unholy and just fucking kill people? This is amazing. This is inspired. I know what I need to do. Hey guys, Choice here, and welcome to another video. Today we'll be covering how to get the most out of your tank character in Arena. For this guide, we'll be demonstrating with a Protection Paladin, but any tank spec can successfully execute the strategy, and it goes like this. This is what you might call an old school technique, and there is a bit of a learning curve if I'm honest, but if you stick with it, I guarantee you will see results. So yeah, hopefully you found that helpful. Be sure to plus ability this video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.